That this is all there is. Come on and let it be. Why does it always turn out like this?
At 8:09 in the morning here in Toronto, this is the Breakfast Club. Always a pleasure for both myself and Glenn and for all of you viewers out there to have this guy on. The best hockey coach from all time, Scotty Bowman, joins us from his home in Buffalo. Good morning, Scotty.
Morning, guys.
Listen, Scotty, I called you up because there's a couple of things I want to talk about and get our weight behind and try and help out with. But first of all, there's a different and brand new venture going on, the inaugural CCM USA Hockey All-American Prospects game going on at the Odd, as I used to call it, the first Niagara Place now. And you're going to be dropping the puck. What's this game all about?
Well, it's a showcase for the American players that are going to be, hopefully some of them, in the draft next season. And they got the top 40 U.S. players. They have a pretty big program in the United States. They have a development team for 17 and 18-year-olds, two different teams in Ann Arbor, Michigan. And they also have a lot of other players that don't get there. Those players are easy to scout because they're playing in the USHL Junior League, but the other players are scattered throughout North America. So even some players, for instance, there's a highly rated defenseman named Seth Jones from the Dallas area, and he's playing this year in Portland in the Western Junior Hockey League. And even players that are playing with the junior teams that have already started will be attending this showcase game. So they've tried to sort of handpick the top 40 players. There'll be a couple of hundred scouts here. I'm sure that each team's got at least a half a dozen amateur scouts, person managers, and everybody. It's a chance to see these players play against each other, which is the only time that they would have that opportunity before the draft. I mean, they'll be able to see these players play, but
game up here. Yeah, very similar to the prospects game up here. Scotty, we've been talking about with the NHL strike or lockout, happening right now. We were talking about junior hockey and how a focus can be put on the younger players, and also some of the players that normally would be in the NHL are going to start the season in the American Hockey League. Get your thoughts on some of these guys going down to the younger guys going down to the American Hockey League, and what your opinion is, what they will get from that.
Well, you're right. I mean, they keep playing, and some of them. I can talk a little bit about Chicago because they have 5 young players that are in their entry-level contracts. That when you're in the entry-level contract, of course, you have a 2-way contract. So those players are all eligible to play on their farm team in Rockford. So there's fellas that people might remember. Andrew Shaw was a good surprise rookie last year. There's another good defenseman named Nick Leddy. He'll be going down there. Jimmy Hayes, Dylan Olsen, Marcus Kruger, a Swedish player. These players all saw a little bit of action last year and probably would play in Chicago this year. So each team, not every team has a half a dozen or 4 or 5, but they all have at least a couple that are going to go down in the American League, and this will help their development because it's a good league, and with each, I mean, we'll look at Edmonton with Everly and Nugent Hopkins. They're going to play in their farm team in Oklahoma.
Yeah.
So when you think about it, these kids won't miss a beat, and it'll, they'll be ready to play when the NHL does start up.
Scotty Bowman spent 30 years in the National Hockey League. To you younger people who are watching us this morning, coach teams, I think 5 teams, St. Louis, Montreal, Buffalo, Pittsburgh, and of course the Red Wings. And Scotty, I know that you never coached Tampa Bay, but it was 20 years ago, believe it or not, yesterday, that Phil Esposito came along and said to everyone he was bringing a female into camp called Manon Rhéaume, who played a couple of exhibition games for him, and certainly, she thanks Esposito to this day because he certainly made her a millionaire. But you must have scratched your head when you heard that there was going to be the first female goaltender coming to training camp.
Yeah, I remember that, and the fact that Phil was quite a pioneer, like you mentioned, and he still gets a lot of accolades, which he deserves, for bringing hockey to the Tampa area. And it kind of had its tough time a few years ago, but with the addition of the new owner, Jeff Vinnick, they've turned the corner. You know, he's put a lot of money into that area. You know, he refurbished the arena, the St. Pete's Times Forum, and he's and of course Steve Yzerman's the general manager, and they're a team that's on the rise. They had a good start the first year, and last year had a little bit of setbacks, but they'll do well there. I go to all their games, and there's a lot of interest. There's a lot of people in that area that get down for the winter, and a lot of Canadians go down, and they'll do well. And Phil deserves the credit. He had a lot of foresight. Unfortunately, he didn't have the ownership. The strong ownership that you need, but he's still there and still a big part of the community.
Scott, I know Glenn's got a question for you. I just got a small add-on to that, if I may, just quickly. I looked this up several times. Do you know, Glenn, you can actually buy a plane ticket, spend the night, and get 2 seats to go down and see Tampa play, and it costs you less than it does to buy 2 tickets to see the Leafs play at the ACC. Unbelievable.
Doesn't surprise me at all.
No.
That's a great segue in talking about Phil Esposito, because my question to you, Scotty, is 40 years ago there was a big series between Canada and Russia, and Paul Henderson, of course, scored the game-winning goals in the last 3 games. But Phil Esposito had such a big role in that series, and you coached against this guy for so many years. His time in Boston and with the Rangers. What do you remember most about Phil Esposito and having to coach against him and what he brought to the table as a player?
Well, he certainly played the 4 greatest games of his long career in that series. The last 4 games, he was dominant. I was watching the game the other night. They showed game 8. And it was amazing how they had Peter Mahovlich and Bobby Clark commenting live about it. Then they said the same thing. And he was an awesome player. And Boston Bruins in the 70s. I mean, they did win the Cup in 70. They won it in 72. Mm-hmm. Were really odds-on favorite to win it in 71 with the miracle that. The Montreal Canadiens, with Ken Dryden being a rookie goalie coming in and just standing on his head. But they were a great team. They were winning 58, 59 games in a season. They should have won more cups. And, of course, Bobby, we all know, not many people that don't rate Bobby Orr as the greatest player that might have ever played in the NHL, and he only played 10 years. But when Orr and Esposito were a tandem, and Phil played a different style in that series because, when he played in the NHL, he didn't have to do much lugging the puck out of his own end and didn't have to spend much time in his own end. But he was a complete player in that series. And, playing the slot is area where he scored so many goals. He was a big, strong guy. He wasn't the fastest skater in the league for sure, but his hands were terrific. And his competitiveness, and I would say he pretty well took that team. It was a veteran team, as people remember the 1972 team that won that Summit Series. Because I coached in '76, and I was trying to recall how many of those players from '72 played in '76. There wasn't very many. Mm-mm. It was a really veteran team, but he took them on his back, even with all their great players. Bobby Clark and Rattel, guys like that, the 2 Mahovlich brothers, like you mentioned, Paul Henderson, Evac Cornway. So there wasn't a lot of them so they were in the twilight, not in the twilight, but right in the end of their careers, most of them, and they did a fantastic job.
Scotty, I'm going to get to the Mike Keenan roast because we want to give it some publicity and help raise as much money as we can and tell the story behind it. But let me just ask you this. I don't think I ever have in all the years we've been together. You didn't coach that 1972 team. Harry Sinden did, but you were coaching Montreal at the time. Were you asked to coach the team, or did it ever come up, or how did that work out?
No, what happened, Harry Sinden had coached the '70 Stanley Cup Boston Bruins, and I don't know if it was a dispute or whatever it was, but Harry left hockey and I'm pretty certain he was working in Rochester, New York, doing some other work, and it made sense that Harry Sinden would be the coach because he wasn't busy or wasn't active with any team. So they took Harry, and John Ferguson had just retired as a player in '71, and he became the assistant coach. So no, it was Harry was a veteran coach, in Boston, and won the cup in '70. And like I said, for some reason was out of hockey when I guess Allan Eagleton was probably the one that put it all together.
Yep.
Kind of, he was running Team Canada at that time. Hockey Canada wasn't really in operation, I don't think, as much as it is now.
No, that's certainly the way it was. It'd be interested to know. I'd be interested to know why Harry wasn't in hockey at that time too. We'll have to look into that. Scotty, you're going to be part of a huge night in Niagara Falls coming up on Friday, October 5th. One of the favorite guys a lot of people will like to roast is a fellow named Iron Mike Keenan. Of course, coached many clubs in the National Hockey League, as our viewers know. But this is all part of Ludsey's celebrity roast, and it's to raise awareness and funds for Parkinson's disease. Tell us a little bit about your involvement.
Yeah, I got a call from Steve Ludzik. Steve is a former a player that played in Chicago with Mike Keenan, and he made himself known a few months ago. Has really been had the misfortune of being diagnosed with Parkinson's a few years ago. Mm-hmm. Finally, in his own mind has put it to rest that he announced it, and he's taken as many people that know Mike Keenan, that have been involved with him. Tom Watt was like Mike's protege coach at University of Toronto. I was Mike Keenan coached at Peterborough, and when I was in Buffalo with Roger Nielsen, we hired Mike Keenan to coach in Rochester, and he coached the Rochester Americans to the Calder Cup. The first or second year that we were in Buffalo together, Roger and I, and then he went on and he went back to Toronto and coached the University of Toronto. Then he went to Philadelphia. Of course, he's been, like you mentioned, with 6 or 7 teams. So we're all getting together, and we're going to try a roast. It's a fundraiser for Parkinson's in the Niagara area, and it's going to take place on October 5th. So I'm looking forward to seeing a lot of ex-hockey people that I haven't seen for some time.
And when we had Ludsey on earlier in the week, folks, I mean, just imagine being able to spend an evening sitting at a table with this guy, Scotty Bowman, and talking to him, for example, about his, let's say his 1976-77 Montreal Canadiens that won 60 games and lost 8, and picking his brains about that. I mean, I told you, Scotty Bowman is the encyclopedia for hockey. Glenn, I know that you, if you don't have it, we'll get it before we let Scotty go. The website they can go to make sure they get tickets.
Yeah, it's called oldteammates.com. oldteammates.com. And just for the folks that they're in the area, it's being held at Club Italia, 2525 Montrose Road in Niagara Falls, Ontario. The dinner's at 7:30. The roast begins at 8 o'clock. It's $150 a ticket. And you get, as Bryan just said, you get to spend time listening and perhaps even talking with guys like Scotty Bowman, Dennis Hull, Jim Ralph, Steve Ludzik, and the list just goes on, and obviously Mike Keenan as well. And
you know how dry Ludsey is, Scotty, and he says, he's not having too much trouble getting guys who want to roast Mike. It's not a big problem for him. So I mean, he's one of those guys. Have you been honored with a roast a couple of 3 times in your life, Scotty?
Oh yeah, I've been honored a couple of times, and
laugh till you can't stop, right? I mean, just crazy stuff.
A lot of fun, because when you get Dennis Hull and Ralph at any kind of an event, the people will be rolling in the aisles by the time it's over. You know that.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, Scotty, I mean,
To have them together. It's one thing to have them separately, Scotty, to listen to Dennis Hall or Jim Ralph separately, but now you got the two of them together with Ludsey. So, I mean, it's just going to be one hilarious night.
and hell, make a weekend of it. You're going down. If you have to drive down and you want to have a couple of beers when you're there and you're worried about driving back, heck, book yourself into the casino, bring the wife down, and both go. Or there's tons for her to go if you want to go with your buddies. Just make a weekend of it. You cannot go wrong, and it's a very nominal fee, but it's going to, as we say, a very worthy cause. It's $8.25. Scotty, I'm going to let you go, but we'd be crazy not to let you have your 2 minutes worth regarding what you think about this whole lockout situation that's going on. I know you've been through them before, and sometime or other they're going to be playing hockey again. But how do you see it?
Yeah, like most people, we're not on the inside. We're trying to get bits and pieces of information, which we get, and I just think that like most hockey fans, we're in a holding pattern, and I know there's a lot of other hockey around. Fortunately, in the Canadian area or on the border area where I live, like you had mentioned at the beginning, the junior leagues provide terrific hockey. So we're not as starved as some would be. It must be very difficult, for fans in areas where they don't have that luxury. But I'm like everybody else. I'm just waiting around, and I'll go to the training camp in Rockford. That starts on Sunday, so I'll have my hockey fixed. That I feel a little privileged on that part,
Okay, Scotty, listen, folks, if you don't know this, by the way, Scotty enjoys the game of golf very much. Ryder Cup's coming up. So two things. First of all, I promised to let you go to watch the first match going off, which is just about to happen. Scotty, are you leaning towards the American team or the European team this year?
Oh, I've been spending a lot of time watching the Golf Channel and listening to all the experts, and they're I guess we should be all get some putting lessons.
Yes.
I mean, that's what they're saying, that the American team. But I'm like you. Like you said before we started, that it's a toss-up. I mean, with so many great players. I know home ice means a lot in hockey, and it means a lot in other sports, and I imagine in golf. But all I know is when they hit the ball, nobody's yelling or screaming. And, these guys are used to a lot of pressure, and it's a pressure-packed tournament, and the people that play in it, I don't think they see this kind of, it's a team game. It's totally different than their usual style of golf. So I'm like you. I'll be glued watching every.
I'll let you go. And what are you doing any scoring at the U.S. Open or the Open Championship this year?
I was invited again, but such a schedule.
That's what Tiger Woods.
I didn't go this year, and I did go to Pebble Beach a couple of years ago. That was my last time, and I don't know if I'll go again. But I'm still a great golf fan.
Just before, I know Bryan wants to. Just before we let you go, I would really be remiss myself, because I had in reading the news this morning, sports this morning, Scotty, just your thoughts of John Davidson leaving St. Louis, in where he might go.
I was totally surprised. People are wondering if he'll go. I don't think John would go back into the broadcasting, although he was such a great broadcaster. I don't know. There is some talk that he might go to Calgary. He played junior hockey there. I don't know if that's just a rumor or not, but I was caught a little bit by surprise with the initial announcement. But when teams change ownerships, he was brought in, by the people that ran the team from New York, and they've sold the team, and there's new ownership. So when teams change ownerships, a lot of things change. But that's a huge change for St. Louis, because I thought John really did a great job there. He hired Armstrong, Doug Armstrong, as the general manager. They've had limited funds. especially in the last couple of years, and look at the success they've had on the ice with the coach Hitchcock. But yeah, I was very surprised with John. But I'm sure he's got something on his plate, and he'll hook up somewhere. But I have no idea where it is.
I'll give him a call, and we'll find out and have him on next week for sure. Scotty, thanks so much for taking some time today. Enjoy the Ryder Cup, and enjoy the honor that's going to be bestowed upon you tomorrow night at that Prospects game. And I'll keep in touch and have you back on soon.
Okay, guys.
Thanks, Scotty. See you on Friday.